welcome back to Guru Grit. My name is Monika, and this week I'm going through the Planetary Powers series, where I discuss the ups and downs of each planet and its exaltation, debilitation, and then the fun stuff, which I get the most questions about, which is what does it mean if I marry someone like that? So the spousal indicators for every sign. Today is Mars Day, so it's going to be all about Mars, because Mars rules Tuesdays. So if you'd like to know more, you could find me on TikTok. I'm usually on there, but I've taken some time off this summer because I take any free moment I can get to be to be with my animal and mineral spirit friends. So let's begin. Mars. Okay, what does Mars rule, first of all? So many things, and there's only so many things that we can get in one sitting. So let's try with practical things. You know, it's your ability to take action, to be logical and strategic, because Mars is a soldier. Mars is a soldier, so they march into battle. So if you have a weak Mars, you know, you could find, you have to be creative in how you defend yourself, first of all, or you could be overly impulsive or too defensive and not in a very, good way. So he can really show the person's ability to be active, obviously, but he can also affect health. So every planet rules something specifically. And in this case, he rules the blood, which is very fitting because, he rules the color red and Tuesdays. So if your Mars is weak, you want to wear red on Tuesdays. That's a really good example. Very, very simple remedy for anyone. So naturally, he has a lot to do with technical skills and technical knowledge. And the signs that he rules are Aries and Scorpio. So the anatomical body parts would be the head and then the external genitals. So clearly a very physical, sort of like primal energy is very Martian. It's to act on instinct rather than intuition. So if you have strong instincts, then you can do very, very well on the earthly realm. And how you respond to fear, how you respond to someone attacking you or your enemies is all to do with Mars. So Mars for a woman's chart, if she's straight, can show her attraction, like a lusty attraction, okay, to men when she's kind of younger or not very self-aware. Jupiter is the ultimate goal. Jupiter is the husband. It's what's good for you. We'll put it that way. And Mars is kind of like who you're attracted to when you're in high school. So something to the effect of, a greased hair with leather jackets and a boy with tattoos on a motorcycle. It's like maybe he's hot now, and maybe he will make a good father. But if your karma is not that, then he's just a bit of rough. Okay, he's just a bit of rough for now. You want to go after the person, make a good parent. Or it could be inverted. You're attracted to really bookish people who are very cerebral and you think that they're safe, but the one who looks dangerous is the one who will protect you and give you the stability that you need. So you have to reflect on that, right? So same thing if you're a man who's interested in men, check your Mars and check your Jupiter and see like, hey, I want this, I like this, but this is what I actually need. And then you can sort of decipher those two archetypes of divine masculine and what's better fitting for you. So let's get into a strong Mars. Okay, Mars is strong in Aries, Scorpio, and he exalts in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn has a lot to do with potential and gradual development. Okay, so like step ladder, like corporate ladder, like moving up. And Mars likes to work, and Capricorn works for the sake of work. They're the workhorse of the zodiac. So naturally when he's there, he just gets to work and he just loves it. He's tireless and he's fearless and he exalts. He just loves being there. Now he's weak in the opposing sign. So he's debilitated in Cancer and he's debilitated in Libra. But it ends there. Mars does not experience debilitation in the sign of Taurus, so please don't panic. I get that in my comments so often, or after readings they'll say, but you said it was good and I have it in Taurus. It's like, that's fine. It's an earth sign. He does well there because there's a physical application to earth signs. So there's an exception, which I'll get to, but he's fine in Taurus. It's okay. He's not debilitated. And Taurus is about, attainment and accumulation of assets. So he does well. He likes competition and battle, so it's okay there. Now, he does not like Virgo very much, okay? So Mars in Virgo is just not really that happy, or Gemini, but we'll talk about that in a second. So he debilitates in Libra, and he debilitates in Cancer. So let's say Cancer, for example. You will still have means to defend yourself and to get what you want out of this life, but it might be more, subversive. So it might make you manipulative or not very forward. And Mars likes forwardness. So you might still be, you might be able to stand up to someone, but just not really to their face or something like that. But it's not all gloom and doom. You know, Mars is still Mars. He's still gonna be himself and give results. So one of the best examples, I can't remember the other person, but I know Michael Phelps has debilitated Mars in the first house, and he's the most decorated Olympian of all time. So it's funny that he's a swimmer in Cancer as well, so it's quite funny. But you know, the first house has a lot to do with athletes and athleticism, because it rules the body. So if Mars is in the first house, then, and in the first house, one of the lesser known things has a lot to do with the person's capacity to solve problems, like, and deal with trouble, because life has ebb and flow. It's not straightforward. It's not linear. So if you can overcome obstacles, you've got Mars in the first house, you're going to be someone who doesn't tend to cower. So that's actually quite nice. So even if he's debilitated, if he's in a house that he corresponds with, you know, or he's happy there, then you can still see yourself come out on top, and then you're able to overcome your enemies. So in Libra, also not to be underestimated, because all planets have a point of maturity, just like human beings, and Mars is 28. So maybe if somebody wanted to be an athlete and they just waited their whole life and they think, okay, I'm over 25, my chance is gone. What could happen is at the age of 28, something just flips, and while everyone else is injured and retiring, they magically boom and they step into the spotlight, right? And Libra is never to be underestimated. Really, really cunning and clever sign, extremely intelligent. So here, in terms of sexuality, which Mars has quite a lot to do with, you know, physical, like I said, primal pleasures, the carnal mind, you know, eating and speaking, maybe a little bit mindlessly, but it's exciting and spontaneous and adventurous and all those things. Well, with Libra, then, you have to impress them, okay? You can't just show up and be pretty. I mean, it helps, but you have to penetrate their mind. You have to show them you've got something knocking around in your skull. You're not just, yoo-hoo, you know? So another thing too is because Libra has a lot to do with sharing. It could make people really sexually amorous or adventurous or something like that, or really, really good at the art of seduction. So even in debilitation, Mars can always have influence. And Libra is a sign of society, so you can control others, okay? You can be really influential, maybe on social media because it's an air sign, or by reputation, you know, good rapport, things like that. So I mentioned Virgo and Gemini. Mars doesn't vibe with them so much because in Mercury, he's a bit frustrated. You know, Mercury likes to think and make a plan and be really chatty, and Mars is just going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? If you want to do something, just go do it. Why are you just talking about it all the time? He also doesn't like them because they're signs of discernment, so they're quite critical. So if you're one of the lucky people, like yours truly, that has Mars in Gemini or Virgo, you could be critical of others and then karmically attract criticism, okay? So if you have it in the 11th house, you have critical friends. If you have it in the 4th house, you have a critical mother. 3rd house, siblings, etc. But in general, you really have to curb the impulse to criticize. It's just not necessary. You have to ask yourself, why am I thinking that? Why am I saying that? Why am I doing that? Etc. Another thing too with those signs is because Mars is action, he will do first and then feel remorse after. And if you've got him in a very, you know, mental sign like Gemini or Virgo, he's just not interested in your PowerPoint plan that you're pointing at powerfully, going, we should do this first and this second. He's like, just do it. Like, what's the holdup, right? So something to consider. Now, in terms of houses, like I mentioned, the 1st house will make a person really like intense, just intense. That's the only word I can come up with, an intense energy. They'll just have this sort of pull, or, you know, maybe even like bombastic, a little bit, you know, not eccentric, that's more mercurial, but just large, you know, like very, very powerful. And then he does very well in notoriously difficult houses. So 3, 6, 8, that's where he loves to shine. You know, the 3rd house, he naturally rules the 3rd sign of Gemini. Gemini rules the hands, arms, and shoulder blades. So, you know, in olden times, one of the few things that you would do in life when they had like 5 professions would be to go into the militia. So if you get Mars in the 3rd house, you know, I think Neymar has this, and he's an amazing athlete. I love soccer. It's very like Mars, you know. So in the 3rd house, it makes a person adept at battle, because you need to use your arms, like to hold up a shield and swing your weapon and attack your enemies and defend yourself from your enemies. So Mars in the third house makes a person, you know, really adept at just getting by day to day. In the sixth house, that actually rules competition, be it sports or going to court, your enemies that you're aware of, he does excellent. Why? Because Mars rules lawyers, and it's the house of work and health, and he actually rules physicians as well. So Mars in the sixth house, these people can really defend themselves and they can do okay in life. You know, they can make money in these very difficult fields, or anytime, you know, if there's any link to the 10th house or the 7th house, or the 6th house is a house of semi wealth. Like if you work hard enough, you can make that house grow. So clearly these people can succeed in things that are notoriously competitive or difficult. To the masses, you drop them in, they'll manage to survive. They'll figure out a way. Okay, like I'm sitting here, there's a little bit of water behind me. I probably wouldn't do well in such a scenario. You drop a very like Mars adept person into the middle of the forest, they can make a fire and some kind of weapon, and they know which berries to eat, etc. Okay, they'll do okay. Now the 8th house as well is quite intense. It's the house where things happen very suddenly, and Mars likes that. Okay, he's not into the slow and steady thing like his very famous enemy Saturn is always like hitting the brakes on that Mars energy. So I mean, they both do well in the 8th house, but he too, you know, it's a house of you know, intensity, and he's quite intense. So if we consider, you know, what happens behind closed doors and things like that, then maybe he might like to thrive. And then the 10th house is his most favorite. So if you've Mars in the 10th house in literally any sign, even Cancer, Libra, Gemini, it doesn't matter, he will pull that chart. He has a gravitational pull because he does so well in the house of ambition, and he's like, okay, I'm here and who wants a piece of me? Like, I'm gonna win, so don't bother. So speaking of winning, if Mars is retrograde in your birth chart, I want to add in a little Guru Grit tidbit, which is, that was corny, but I might use that. I quite like Guru Grit tidbit. If he's retrograde, I would never instigate, you know, gossip or trouble or something like that. Like, obviously you use your logic, you know, if you have to go exchange insurance papers or do something you need to do it. But I mean, like, petty things, because Mars rules bickering. So he can make people just bicker, you know, in the 7th house. People just agitate you. It's not a big deal, but it's these petty things that add up. So never start that. But you can defend yourself, and you can like finish it and put an end to it and say, okay, like, let it die, please. We're done talking about this. So in that sense, you know, he's quite useful. It's useful to know when he's retrograde, so when to take action. It's not that you can't take action. He's just telling you, now you strike. But otherwise, I'm going to have to like gag you and restrain you and learn to restrain yourself. Now, in combination with other planets, he's naturally going to do really well with fiery, large celestial bodies like the Sun and Jupiter. He's very happy with them or being aspected by them. And with the Moon, surprisingly, he's not so bad with the Moon. Now, since the Moon is the mother and he does well in the 8th house, something, you know, to the effect of like the 8th house surgery, if he's in a barren sign, then if you look at the chart of a woman and you see Mars, Moon in a, you know, like a sign that doesn't do so well for children, then you can see that that woman, there's a good probability that she'll have a C-section, because it's the house of cutting things open, and Mars rules the blade, he rules metals, he rules physicians. So you can kind of deduce that that person will have a C-section at some point in their life. Another thing is possible fertility treatments, because you go through so many shots, you do so much blood work, and you check hormones, you check this, that. So you can kind of figure out, you know, how he talks to the other planets and what that holds in store for that person, so they can like brace themselves. You'll still have children, of course, but you know, it just kind of lets you know how it's going to happen. Okay, so another one is with Saturn. So it's so funny because Saturn is, you know, it's funny to me, but it's like the elder, and he rules wisdom. And Mars is a young soldier. He's you know, he's tough, and he doesn't care about consequences, and he doesn't think before he speaks or acts. So he just wants to go out there and be his young, vibrant self. So when these two aspect or conjunct or oppose or something, then you've got like this stopping energy that's really slow, and then this go energy. You know, it's like sitting on top of your mule trying to haul some grain to the village, and it's injured, and you're just hitting it, and it can't walk. So it goes and kind of limps, and it's just like, it's really, really rocky momentum. That's how I would put it. So it can frustrate people. Now, especially men, because it has so much to do with masculinity, especially on the earthly plane, where it's, you know, easy to define and compartmentalize and all of those things. So, you know, Saturn can make Mars people feel like they should feel bad about their primal desire or their carnal desires. They can frustrate or even deplete their libido or sexuality. You know, like, why do you like that? Or what's wrong with me for wanting that? What's wrong with me for liking that? You know, in some cases, because it's very lusty, it can cause an intense attraction to older people, you know, like sexual attraction. And then also, I was mentioning earlier, engineers. So Saturn rules machines, and Mars has a lot to do with like technical equipment. And the North Node is, you know, a lot to do with electronics, and the South Node has a lot to do with like deciphering of things such as mathematics. So if you get Mars with the nodes and Saturn, you're gonna get someone who just has an innate ability to kind of just look at something and they just know how it works. So they could just take it apart and put it back together like it's the easiest thing in the world. Filming equipment, music equipment, okay, like electronic, of course, like amps and cables and things like that. And just knowing how things work, you know, just not long ago, my sister got my nieces a Rubik's Cube, and I remembered my dad got me one when I was really little. I think it lasted like maybe 2 days before I just thought, who cares? Like, who cares about figuring this out? I could use my mental energy for something so much more. So you can tell my Mars is just sort of like, you know, but if someone's Mars is quite strong or aspected by these really technical planets, then that person is gonna sit there and they're gonna figure it out. They're fixers. These people like to fix things. They like to figure things out. They might see something and just like the way that it works. So even in men, you'll get men who like to cook because he rules fire and metal. So like chefs, Mars rules chefs. Probably, you know, if he's really unhealthy, like pyromaniacs, things like that. So just keep an eye out for your Mars. Now, speaking of professions, let's see if you have a Mars dominant 7th house. He's sitting in the 7th house. He is your spouse, etc. So if you're Taurus ascendant, okay, Libra ascendant, then you're gonna have some of this influence. So the obvious one is intensity, okay, a passionate person. And in terms of bonding, they will probably really, really care for physical touch. Okay, they'll probably really, really care for that. Check the house to see, to make sure. Excuse me, but you know, they'll probably like to be close to you and actually do things with you. Maybe they want to go running with you, you know, share physically intense things, like maybe hiking or swimming, whatever. But Mars likes that. It likes a bit of friendly competition, so things of that nature. Now, in terms of what your spouse is going to look like, well, the obvious thing is strong, okay? So there's no specification on like height or size, but let's say stoutness. I wouldn't say stocky, unless that's like a very Taurian, you know, characteristic. So if it's like Mars and Taurus, they could be quite stocky, have like a wide set neck, really thick fingers or something like that. But just a stout person, or regardless of male or female, you know, just a really strong person. Like their personality is very strong and they have conviction. That's why I love Mars energy. And I'm set to marry a very Mars person. So I'm very excited to, you know, be with someone who has a backbone and opinions and beliefs, and they stand their ground. So the archetype is going to be someone who protects you and provides for you. They're going to be, you need to give them things to do, because Mars rules goals and goal setting. So you're going to get a spouse that, you know, if you give them something to do or redecorate or build, like a fireplace would be a very good example, or maybe if you had like manual garage doors or fences, you ask them to make them electronic, they would revel in that. They would love to like fix it and figure out how to make it better or function or something like that. It reminds you of those, I forget what they're called, but those contests where you make those, like, those engineers get together and make those like bots, and they like they fight each other. It's all like metal and sparks and some fire sometimes. So that's very, very Mars energy. Now, professions, I mentioned chefs, but you know, you can have barbers because metal shears, okay, cutting, doctors, litigators, so lawyers, and people in uniform, because Mars rules the soldiers. So of course people in the militia, But, you know, present day, many people work in uniforms. So, I mean, they could be delivery driver if it's in the third house or in a sign of Mercury. A very obvious one is police officers, paramedics, firefighters. Those are Mars professions. So there's, and then I mentioned engineers. That's a very obvious one. And today's day and age, look to see if he is with one of the nodes. If he's with the north node or the south node, you can get somebody in computer science. You can get somebody who does graphic design if he's very creative, you know. Some kind of strategist, okay, project manager, planner, coordinator, because, yeah, he rules like military strategy and the logical mind. So those are all the things that Mars can do for you. And believe it or not, there's even more. Just a really underrated planet, but very, very cool. So, I mean, I mentioned a lot of stuff, what Mars can do for men, but one last thing I want to say, because I do see this very strangely, more common than when I was learning, I never really saw it that often, but I don't know, my clients are very intuitive, you know, they're very instinctive, they know they need something. So if Mars is with the North Node in a woman's chart, even in a man's chart, but for the woman, because we're so sensitive and delicate in terms of hormones and our balance, you know, it can be a powerful disruptor. So, you know, check the sign, check the house and everything. But generally speaking, okay, Mars is the blood, and the North Node has a lot to do with toxins or detoxification process and things like that. So people like this can struggle with boundaries, and not just physical boundaries, you know, emotional boundaries and social boundaries as well. So if you have Mars with the North Node, then you want to be sure that you only use the best things for your body, like natural soaps, natural shampoos, natural candles, you eat organic foods, and I mean, it should go without saying, but absolutely no drinking, no smoking, no substances, nothing like that, because you're so hypersensitive to those things. And you can even get chronic allergy sufferers, or acute, like to the extent where people just wake up and their allergies are so bad they can't move, they're incapacitated in their beds. So they're just hypersensitive to allergens and things like that. But you know, just in general, Mars with the North Node, a super impulsive person, very impulsive. You know, if it's in second house or eighth house, that has a lot to do with one's you know, mouth and oral fixations or speaking in their voice box. Oh, they can just be like, you know, Mars in the second house in general just makes a person really, really forward. So I told my friend, I was like, I'm so happy to meet someone like you, just someone like me, a lady of rude speech. So, you know, you just get someone who's just fires off, and it can make them really impulsive, like a mindless eater. So someone who snacks compulsively and they don't even know that they're doing it. Or, you know, the other extreme, which is they don't eat enough, or they're a chronic nail biter or a smoker just because they have to sort of satisfy this impulse. They don't even know where it's coming from. Super fascinating planet. I so love him. I love all that he does. A leaf just fell on my head. Maybe it's a sign. I don't know. Thank you, sir. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. I'm going to continue through, you know, the rest of the planets and then move on to houses. So eventually I'm going to have a whole course up. Until then, I finally launched my Patreon, so that's up and running, and, you know, go read my articles on Medium. Let me know what you think. I'll see you on TikTok. Once winter hits here, it's supposed to be super, super cold this year, so I'll be on there a lot. So come say hi on the live. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.